Let me ask you something. How many times have you done something, not because you wanted to, but because you wanted someone else's approval? Maybe it was your boss, maybe it was your parents, or maybe it was people on social media you don't even know. We all do it. We chase the little nods, the likes, the compliments, the claps on the back. And every time we think, yes, now I'm worth something. But here's the brutal truth. The moment your worth depends on someone else's approval, you've already handed them your power. And that's exactly what Nietzsche, the philosopher who lived one of the hardest, loneliest lives, warned us against. He believed that most people never truly live their own lives. They live as reflections of other people's opinions, and in doing so, they become prisoners of approval. So here's the question. Do you want to be liked, or do you want to be powerful? In this video, I'm going to share Nietzsche's most brutal life lessons that will shake you, maybe even disturb you, but if you listen closely, they might just free you. Lessons about strength, loneliness, rejection, and the painful but liberating act of living for yourself. By the end, you might never look at approval the same way again. So, stay with me. This might be the conversation you've been needing for years. Think about the last time you made a decision that wasn't really your own. Maybe you wore something you didn't like just to fit in. Maybe you laughed at a joke you didn't find funny. Maybe you took a career path that wasn't truly yours, but it kept your family proud. That's the invisible prison Nietzsche warned us about, the prison of approval. And it's terrifying because you don't even realize you're locked inside. The bars are invisible, but they're strong enough to keep most people trapped for life. Nietzsche believed most people never truly live. They merely perform. They spend their lives acting in a play written by others, by parents, by teachers, by bosses, by culture, by society. And here's the kicker, the applause they're chasing, it never lasts. One day people cheer you, the next they forget you. And still, we bend ourselves to fit their expectations. Why? Because approval feels safe. Rejection feels like death. And Nietzsche understood this deeply. He lived most of his life rejected, mocked, and misunderstood. His books didn't sell. His colleagues distanced themselves. Even the woman he loved rejected him. 3 times. Imagine that. 3 times. And yet, instead of collapsing under the weight of rejection, Nietzsche asked himself a brutal question. Why should their approval matter more than my truth? And that's the question I want you to sit with. How much of your life right now is shaped by what others think of you? How many of your decisions are really yours? Because here's the thing, every time you let someone's opinion dictate your action, you give away a little bit of your strength. You hand over your self-respect. And the more you do it, the more powerless you feel. It's a slow, invisible surrender. Nietzsche didn't want us to live that way. He wanted us to create what he called the sovereign individual, a human being who writes their own values, who doesn't need approval to validate their existence. And he knew it would be painful. He called it a path of suffering, because breaking free from the need for approval feels like tearing off your own skin. But what comes after is power. So let me ask you, if tomorrow no one approved of you, if no one clapped, no one praised, no one liked your posts, would you still be proud of who you are? That question is the beginning of freedom. And Nietzsche would say, if the answer is no, then you've still got chains around your neck. But don't worry, that's where his lessons begin. In the next part, we'll look at one of his most shocking ideas, that suffering, loneliness, and rejection aren't curses. They are, in fact, the very tools that make you powerful. Here's a truth most of us run from. Life will break you. It will put you on your knees. People will leave you. Opportunities will slip away. You'll be laughed at, doubted, maybe even betrayed by the ones you trusted most. Now, most people see this as the end. They give up, they collapse, they hide in distractions. But Nietzsche? He looked straight into the storm and said, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." Nietzsche believed that suffering is not something to avoid. It is the very soil in which greatness grows. Think about it. A tree that grows in soft soil, shielded from all storms, never develops strong roots. The first real wind can knock it down. But the tree that faces brutal winters, storms and drought, its roots go deeper. It stands unshaken. Now replace that tree with you. Your struggles, your heartbreaks, your failures, your sleepless nights, they are not signs that life is unfair. They are invitations to build strength no one can take from you. Nietzsche himself knew suffering more intimately than most. He battled migraines so severe they blinded him for days. His health collapsed so often that he could barely teach or socialize. And yet, instead of drowning in self-pity, he saw his pain as the hammer that was shaping him into something indestructible. He wrote, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." It's a line so famous today that it's been reduced to a cliché, but Nietzsche meant it in the rawest sense. He wasn't writing motivational quotes for Instagram. He was speaking from the battlefield of his own broken body and lonely heart. Here's where it hits you and me. Every time we avoid discomfort, every time we try to escape rejection, every time we beg for comfort, we're avoiding the very thing that could give us our power. Ask yourself this: what was the hardest season of your life? Maybe it was losing someone you loved. Maybe it was failing at something you thought defined you. Maybe it was being humiliated, abandoned, or ignored. And yet, didn't that season shape you? Didn't it carve something into your soul that you carry to this day? Nietzsche would say, stop cursing your suffering. Start asking, what is this pain trying to make of me? See, most of us want the reward without the test. We want confidence without rejection, wisdom without mistakes, strength without loss. But it doesn't work that way. Pain is the tuition we pay for growth. And Nietzsche's life shows that those who embrace their pain instead of running from it end up unshakable. So the next time life knocks you down, don't ask, why me? Instead, ask, what strength is being built in me right now? And let me be real with you. It's not easy. It's lonely. People will think you're strange for embracing hardship. They'll pity you. They'll whisper. But Nietzsche would laugh at that and say, good, let them talk. Their approval is a chain. Break it. Because when you can walk through pain without begging for sympathy, without chasing validation, you become something terrifyingly powerful. You become someone who can't be controlled. And that's the lesson here. Suffering isn't your enemy. It's your secret weapon. But there's another step, and it's even harder. Nietzsche believed that true power comes not just from enduring suffering, but from standing alone, from walking away from the herd entirely. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Let's be honest, one of the scariest feelings in life is loneliness. That silence when no one calls. That emptiness when you realize people you thought would stay, didn't. Most of us will do almost anything to avoid being alone. We cling to groups, to trends, to approval, because at least if we're with the crowd, we don't have to face ourselves. But Nietzsche, he believed the exact opposite. He thought the herd, the masses were poison for the soul. Why? Because the herd values safety over truth, conformity over authenticity, and approval over power. Think about it. In every workplace, in every friend group, even in families, you'll find invisible rules. Rules about what you can say, what you can wear, what dreams are acceptable. And as long as you obey, you're rewarded with approval. Step outside those lines, You'll face criticism, gossip, maybe even exile. And that's where Nietzsche asks the hardest question: are you willing to walk away? He believed greatness is born in solitude, that the strongest people are forged when they stand apart from the crowd and dare to think their own thoughts. He called this the path of the free spirit, someone who isn't tied down by the herd's morality, who builds their own values, who dares to be misunderstood. And let me tell you, it's brutal. Imagine leaving behind the comfort of applause. Imagine being okay with people calling you arrogant, crazy, or selfish. Imagine sitting in silence with no one clapping, no one nodding, no one agreeing. Could you take it? Nietzsche could. He spent the last years of his life almost entirely alone. No family, no romantic partner, no academic circle cheering him on. And yet, it was in that silence that he wrote his most powerful works, the very books that now shake the world. Here's the paradox. The more you chase belonging, the less you belong to yourself. The more you need the herd, the weaker you become. But when you dare to be alone, truly alone, you discover something no crowd can give you: clarity. Because when the noise fades, your own voice gets louder, your instincts sharpen. You begin to see who you really are, not who you're supposed to be. And that's terrifying, but it's also freedom. Ask yourself, how many of your beliefs are truly yours? Your career goals, your political views, even the way you dress. Are they yours, or are they echoes of the herd around you? Nietzsche would challenge you: strip it all away. Stand naked before yourself. What remains? That is your truth. But here's the danger. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll realize just how much of your life has been borrowed, how much has been scripted by others. And then comes the real test. Do you dare to live it differently? Most won't. Most will run back to the herd because the loneliness feels unbearable. But the few who stay in that solitude long enough, they transform. They become creators of their own values. They stop seeking approval. They start gaining power. And listen, this isn't about becoming antisocial or hating people. Nietzsche wasn't telling you to abandon every relationship. He was telling you to abandon dependence, to build a self so strong that even if the world turns its back, you remain unbroken. That's the gift of loneliness. It forces you to face yourself, and in that mirror, you either collapse or you rise. So if you've ever felt abandoned, if you've ever felt like the outsider, if you've ever sat alone wondering why you don't fit in, don't see it as weakness. See it as your training ground, the place where you're being carved into something the herd will never understand, because only the one who walks alone can walk their own path. And that leads us to Nietzsche's next brutal lesson. If you want true power, you can't just survive loneliness. You have to rise above ordinary morality itself. You have to dare to create your own. If you've made it this far, you've probably already felt a shift inside you. Maybe a small voice whispering, "Yes, I've lived for others more than myself." But Nietzsche wouldn't let you stop there. He believed that breaking free from approval and even from loneliness was only the beginning. The real power comes when you stop living by the rules of the herd altogether. Now, this is where people misunderstand Nietzsche. When he talked about living beyond good and evil, he wasn't saying, "Go out and be cruel." He wasn't telling you to abandon kindness or justice. What he was saying is far more radical. Stop blindly obeying the values you were handed. Stop living by default. Think about it. Most of your shoulds and shouldn'ts were written long before you were born. Your culture told you what's respectable. Your religion told you what's moral. Your family told you what's acceptable. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking, "But do I believe this? Do I choose this for myself?" Nietzsche's challenge was simple but brutal. Burn down the borrowed rules. Stand in the ashes. then rebuild your way. He called this the revaluation of all values. It means taking everything society told you, success, failure, right, wrong, worthy, unworthy, and asking, does this serve me or does it chain me? Here's an example. Maybe society says success means a six-figure salary, a big house, a car that shines. And maybe you've been chasing that approval without even noticing. But deep down, what you want is something else. Maybe a simple life, maybe art, maybe freedom from debt. Nietzsche would say, stop bowing to their definition of success. Write your own. Or maybe you've been taught that self-sacrifice is always noble, that saying yes even when you're empty makes you a good person. Nietzsche would shake his head. He'd say, is it noble to betray yourself? Or is it weakness disguised as virtue? This is where it gets uncomfortable, because once you start questioning these borrowed values, you'll see just how much of your identity isn't really yours. And then you face the hardest choice. Keep living safe inside their rules, or dare to create your own. But here's the reward if you do: freedom like you've never felt before. No longer chained by, what will they think? No longer begging for approval. No longer measuring yourself by someone else's scale. You become the author of your own morality, your own meaning. Nietzsche called this rare kind of person the Übermensch. Not a superhero in the comic book sense, but a human who rises above the herd, who dares to create their own values, even when the world misunderstands. But let's be clear, this path isn't for the faint of heart. When you reject the herd's morality, people will attack you. They'll call you selfish, arrogant, immoral. They'll say you've lost your way, and maybe part of you will doubt yourself. That's why Nietzsche said this journey requires immense strength, the kind of strength only suffering and solitude can build. Ask yourself right now, whose values are you living? Who defined your idea of success, of love, of worthiness? And if you stripped all of that away, what would remain? This is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes not just intellectual, but deeply personal. Because once you see how much of your life has been dictated by borrowed rules, you can't unknow it. You can only choose: stay chained or break free. And when you break free, you don't just stop seeking approval, you stop needing morality as a crutch. You live by your truth, not theirs. But Nietzsche wasn't done yet. He believed there was one final step. It wasn't enough to suffer. It wasn't enough to walk alone. It wasn't even enough to build your own values. To live fully, to gain true power, you must embrace the heaviest truth of all, the eternal return. And that's what we'll uncover in the final part. Imagine this. One night, as you're lying in bed, a mysterious figure appears at the foot of your bed. He whispers to you, every single moment of your life, every laugh, every heartbreak, every failure, every joy, you will have to live again, exactly as it was, again and again for eternity. No edits, no do-overs, no skipping the painful parts. Every choice, every second lived on repeat, forever. How would you feel? Horrified? Crushed by the weight of regret? Or would you smile, knowing you lived fully, authentically, without apology? This was Nietzsche's thought experiment, what he called the eternal return. He used it as the ultimate test of power. Because if the thought of reliving your life forever feels like torture, maybe you haven't truly lived. Maybe you've lived too much for approval, too much for others, too much in fear. But if you can say, yes, I would live it again, I would suffer it again, I would walk alone again, because it was mine. Then, Nietzsche says, you have tasted true power. And here's the brutal truth. Most people would fail this test. They'd look back at lives spent chasing validation, bending under approval, living by rules that weren't their own. And the idea of living that life on loop forever, It would feel like a nightmare. But Nietzsche wasn't trying to scare you. He was offering a challenge. Live now in such a way that you could joyfully live it again and again. That means stop waiting for permission. Stop living someone else's script. Stop bowing to borrowed values. And start asking, if I had to live this choice forever, would I still make it? Would you still stay in that job that drains you? Would you still waste hours scrolling for approval from strangers? Would you still silence your voice because you fear rejection? Or would you start to live so boldly, so authentically, that eternity itself would feel like a gift? Nietzsche himself lived a life most would call tragic, lonely, sick, rejected, unrecognized in his own time. But imagine this. If you asked him whether he would live it all again, I believe he would say yes, because every ounce of suffering carved the thinker who gave us these truths. Every rejection built his independence. Every lonely night forced him to write words that still ignite souls a century later. That's the paradox Nietzsche hands us. Power doesn't come from approval. It comes from living in such fierce truth that even if the universe forced you to live it all again, you'd embrace it. So here's the challenge I'll leave you with. Tonight, when you're alone with your thoughts, ask yourself, if I had to live this exact life again, forever, would I want to? If the answer is no, don't panic. Take it as a sign, a call, a demand from your deeper self to change. Because you are not here to perform for the herd. You are not here to beg for claps, likes, nods, or approval. You are here to live so deeply, so honestly, so unapologetically, that eternity itself could not exhaust your spirit. That is Nietzsche's brutal life lesson. Stop seeking approval, start gaining power, and maybe, just maybe, that starts tonight.